You're done here! I don't do failure, Elena. I never have.
Julian Cross said, his voice flat as concrete. I don't do failure, Elena, I never have. Before she could speak, he swung the suitcase past her and let it crash down the porch steps, her clothes spilling across the wet pavement. Then he shut the door. She heard the deadbolt turn. Less than 14 hours later, Elena was standing on a cliffside terrace in Malibu, holding a set of keys to a $30 million mansion with her name on the deed, wondering how her whole life had flipped upside down in a single night, and wondering if the man who threw her out was about to regret it more than he ever imagined. If stories like this pull at your heart, hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because this story is about to take you somewhere you won't expect. Elena had met Julian 3 years earlier at a fundraising gala her firm had catered. He was magnetic back then, sharp suit, sharper smile, the kind of man who filled a room without raising his voice. She fell fast. Too fast, her best friend Margaret used to tell her, half joking, half not. He likes you best when you're small, Margaret said once over wine, watching Elena shrink a little every time Julian corrected her in public. Elena laughed it off. She always laughed it off. For 2 years, the cracks were small enough to ignore. Julian criticized her job, an assistant marketing coordinator at a nonprofit, as beneath what a woman on his arm should be doing. He picked her outfits before dinners with his business partners. He controlled the finances, telling her it was easier if he managed everything, and somewhere along the way, Elena stopped noticing she'd handed him access to her own savings account. The final 6 months were the worst. Julian's company had taken a hit after a failed merger, and his mood soured into something colder. He started coming home late, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers, brushing off her questions with a practiced ease that made her feel crazy for asking. "You're imagining things," he told her one night. "You always do this when you're insecure." Then came the afternoon Elena lost her job. The nonprofit's biggest donor pulled funding, and half the staff was let go, Elena included. She came home rehearsing how to tell him gently, hopping for comfort. Instead, Julian's face twisted the moment she said the words. "You're joking," he said. "I'm not. They cut half the department, Julian, it wasn't." "I don't care whose fault it is." He was already moving toward the bedroom. "I have investors coming to this apartment next month. I can't have a girlfriend who can't hold a job." "That's not fair," she said, her voice cracking. "I've supported you through every single setback you've had." "You've supported me," he laughed, and it wasn't kind. "Elena, I built everything you're standing in, this apartment, that car you drive. You've contributed nothing but liabilities." She stood frozen as he pulled her suitcase from the closet and began throwing her clothes inside without folding, without care, a blouse catching on the zipper and tearing. "Julian, stop, please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about, get out." She followed him to the door, pleading, but he was already hauling the suitcase onto the porch. "You wanted independence so badly," he said. "Go find it somewhere else." Then the door closed and the lock clicked, and Elena stood on the steps of the life she thought she'd built, watching her clothes scatter across the wet concrete like the pieces of something that had never really been whole. She had nowhere to go. Margaret was out of town. Her parents had passed years ago in a car accident when Elena was in college, and the only family she had left was her grandmother, Rosalind Whitmore, who lived 3 hours away, and whom Elena hadn't spoken to in almost a year. Not since Julian had convinced her that visiting was a waste of a weekend, when they could be networking instead. Elena drove until she found a 24-hour diner parking lot, and she slept or tried to curled in the driver's seat of her car, her torn blouse still creased across her lap. She cried until there was nothing left, and somewhere around 3 in the morning, exhausted, she whispered into the dark, "I'm so sorry, Grandma, I should have called." At 7 the next morning, a knock on her window startled her awake. 2 people in dark, tailored suits stood outside her car, and for one terrified second, Alina thought Julian had sent someone to harass her. Instead, the older man offered a small, careful smile. "Are you Alina Whitmore, granddaughter of Rosalind Whitmore?" Alina's throat tightened. "Yes, why is she okay?" The woman beside him lowered her eyes gently. "Your grandmother passed away 3 days ago, Ms. Whitmore. We've been trying to reach you. I'm so sorry for your loss." The grief hit Alina like a wave, guilt riding right behind it. 3 days. And she hadn't even known, hadn't been there, hadn't called in months. But before she could fully collapse into that sorrow, the man continued. "Your grandmother left very specific instructions for you. She named you the sole heir to her estate. We're here to bring you to your new home." "My new home." "The Malibu property," he said simply, as if that explained everything. "Please follow us." Alina followed their black sedan in a daze along the coastal highway, her mind spinning through grief and disbelief in equal measure. She hadn't known her grandmother owned property in Malibu. She hadn't known much of anything. She realized Rosalind had always been quiet about money, living modestly in her small coastal cottage up north. The same cottage Alina remembered visiting as a little girl, eating peach cobbler on the porch while her grandmother told her stories about strength and patience. 40 minutes later, they arrived at a gated estate overlooking the Pacific, white stone walls and glass catching the morning light. Alina stepped out of her car, her legs unsteady beneath her. "This belongs to you now," the older attorney said. "Everything inside, the house, the land, the accounts attached to it." "There has to be some mistake," Alina whispered. "My grandmother lived in a 2-bedroom cottage. She couldn't have afforded something like this." The woman attorney reached into her briefcase and withdrew a cream envelope, sealed with wax. "She asked us to give you this first, before anything else." Alina's hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was her grandmother's familiar, looping handwriting, and the moment she saw it, tears blurred her vision. "My dearest Alina, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And I am sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I still had the chance. There is so much you don't know about our family, about your mother, and about the man you've been giving your heart to. I need you to be patient with me one last time. Everything will make sense soon. I promise you that." Alina read the words 3 times before she could breathe normally again. The attorney gently touched her shoulder. "There are more letters, Ms. Whitmore. Your grandmother left detailed instructions about when each one should be opened. We'll be here to help you through it, whenever you're ready." Standing in the doorway of a mansion she never knew existed, holding a letter from a grandmother she thought she understood, Alina realized her whole life was about to be rewritten from the ground up. Before we go further, I need you to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because what Alina finds in the next letter is going to change everything you think you know about this story. Drop a comment telling me who you think has been hiding the truth from her. Alina spent the rest of that first day wandering through rooms she couldn't quite believe belonged to her. Floor to ceiling, windows framed the ocean in every direction. The furniture was tasteful, warm, nothing like the cold showroom perfection of Julian's apartment. It didn't feel like a stranger's house. It felt, oddly, like her grandmother had built it with Alina's comfort in mind, long before Alina ever knew it existed. By evening, the front gate buzzer sounded. Alina checked the security monitor and felt her stomach drop. Julian stood at the gate, along with 2 people she didn't recognize. She almost didn't let them in, but curiosity and a small, foolish hope that he'd come to apologize won out. The moment Julian stepped through the door, his eyes swept across the marble floors, the sweeping staircase, the ocean view stretching behind her. His expression shifted from smugness to something greedier. "Alina," he said, softer than she'd heard him speak in months. "Baby, I've been calling you all day. I was worried sick. You threw me out, Julian. I was upset. I said things I didn't mean." He stepped closer, glancing again at the chandelier above them. "This is incredible. Whose place is this?" Mine, she said. My grandmother left it to me. His eyebrows lifted, and for a moment something calculating flickered behind his eyes before he masked it with concern. Alina, that's wonderful. I'm happy for you. Really. Look, about last night I was stressed about the investors and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. Let me make it up to you. Let's put everything behind us. Alina studied him, this man she had loved for 3 years, and for the first time she saw him clearly, not through the fog of affection, but through the cold light of what he'd done. You threw my clothes on the pavement, Julian. You called me a liability. I was wrong, he said quickly. I'll do anything. Just let's talk about this somewhere more private. His eyes flicked again toward the staircase, toward the obvious wealth surrounding them. Alina almost believed him. Almost. But then the woman standing near the door, one of Julian's companions, whom Alina hadn't been introduced to, spoke up unexpectedly. Julian, tell her the truth or I will. Julian's jaw tightened. This isn't the time, Sabrina. Tell her, the woman repeated. Alina looked between them. Tell me what? The woman, Sabrina, crossed her arms. I'm his business partner. We've been trying to secure funding for a new venture for months. This morning, Julian told our investors he was reconnecting with an heiress. He knew about the inheritance before you even got here, Alina. He has contacts at the county records office. He's known about your grandmother's estate for 2 days. The room went silent. Alina felt something in her chest crack wide open. You knew, she said slowly. You knew my grandmother died, and instead of telling me, you threw me out of the apartment first. Julian's composure slipped. It's not what it sounds like. Then what does it sound like? Alina's voice rose, shaking. Did you throw me out so I'd come here alone, desperate, and you could swoop back in once I had money? Alina, please. Get out, she said, both of you now. Julian's mask fully dropped then, his voice hardening into the tone she recognized too well. You'll regret this. You have no idea how to manage money like this. You'll run this place into the ground without me. I managed to survive you for 3 years, Alina said, opening the front door herself. I think I'll manage a house. After the door closed behind them, Alina stood alone in the foyer, breathing hard, tears slipping down her face. Not from heartbreak this time, but from something closer to relief. That night she found the second letter, exactly where the attorney said it would be, tucked inside the study desk. She broke the seal with hands that had finally stopped shaking. My Alina, the letter began, I always suspected the man in your life wasn't who he pretended to be. I hired someone to look into him quietly, months ago, after you stopped visiting. I am sorry for prying, but I had to know if he deserved you. What I found was troubling, debts hidden from you, a pattern of relationships that ended the same way his did with you, always after the woman's money or family connections dried up. I never told you because I wanted you to see it yourself. I am only sorry it took losing everything for you to finally see clearly. Alina pressed the letter to her chest, grief and vindication tangled together in her throat. Her grandmother had tried to protect her, quietly, the way grandmothers do, watching from a distance, gathering truth instead of forcing it. The next few days blurred together in waves of paperwork, meetings with the estate attorney, and long walks along the private beach behind the house, trying to process a life that no longer resembled anything familiar. It was during one of these walks that Alina met Theo Marchetti. He was standing near the property line, sketchbook in hand, capturing the curve of the coastline in soft charcoal strokes. Alina almost turned back, embarrassed to be caught in old sweatpants with swollen eyes from crying, but he looked up first and offered a small, easy smile. Sorry, he said. I didn't realize this stretch was private property now. I used to sketch here when the old woman who owned it let me. Alina blinked. You knew my grandmother. His expression softened with recognition. You're Rosalind's granddaughter. She talked about you all the time, said you had her stubborn streak. He extended a hand. Theo, I did odd jobs around the property, gardening, repairs, whatever she needed. She used to feed me peach cobbler and tell me stories about you. Something in Alina's chest loosened at the mention of the cobbler, a small, warm memory rising unbidden. She still made that. Every week, Theo said, laughing gently. Insisted it was her secret weapon for getting people to open up. They talked for almost an hour that first afternoon, and Alina found herself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in what felt like months. Theo didn't ask about the mansion, didn't seem impressed or hungry for what it represented. He asked about her instead, what she loved, what she'd studied, whether she still painted the way her grandmother used to brag about. I haven't painted in years, Alina admitted. Julian thought it was a waste of time. Theo's jaw tightened slightly, though his voice stayed even. Sounds like a man who never understood what mattered. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you're subscribed, because things are about to take a turn nobody saw coming. Drop a comment and let me know, do you think Theo is who he says he is, or is there more beneath the surface? Like this video if you want more stories like this one. Over the following weeks, Alina opened each letter her grandmother left behind, one truth revealing another. The fourth letter uncovered something Alina never expected. Her grandmother hadn't simply built her wealth alone. Decades earlier, Rosalind had co-founded a small investment firm with a partner who eventually became one of the largest shipping magnates on the West Coast. When he passed away childless, he'd left the majority of his shares to Rosalind, citing her decades of quiet loyalty and business, insight that the world had never credited her for, simply because she was a woman working in an era that refused to see her. Alina, the letter read, I built this from nothing but patience and refusal to be underestimated. I never flaunted it because wealth attracts the wrong kind of attention, and I wanted you to grow up grounded, not gilded. I am telling you now because you will need this knowledge to protect what's yours. There are people, even in our own family, who believe they deserve a piece of what I built. Do not let guilt make your decisions for you. The warning proved prophetic. Days later, Alina's estranged uncle, Desmond Whitmore, her late father's brother, a man Alina had met only a handful of times at holidays growing up, arrived unannounced at the gate, demanding a meeting. This is a family matter, Desmond said, seated stiffly across from Alina in the mansion's sitting room, his lawyer beside him. Your grandmother wasn't in her right mind at the end. We intend to contest the will. Alina kept her voice steady, though her pulse hammered in her ears. She was sharper than anyone I've ever known, right up until the end. You'll find that hard to prove otherwise. We'll see what a judge thinks, Desmond said coldly. You disappeared for a year, barely visited, and now you inherit everything. It doesn't sit right. The accusation stung more than Alina expected, guilt threading through her anger. She had stayed away, after all, swept up in Julian's world, and some small part of her wondered if Desmond had a point. But then she remembered the letters, the careful, deliberate love in every page, and she straightened her spine. She left detailed letters explaining every decision, Alina said. Independent witnesses signed off on the estate plan years ago. If you want to contest it, you're welcome to try. But I don't think you'll like what the investigation into your own finances might turn up, considering the loan you took against her name 3 years ago that she never approved. Desmond's face went pale. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably beside him. How do you? My grandmother kept records of everything, Alina said simply. She always did. Desmond left without another word, and Alina sat alone afterward, hands trembling not from fear this time, but from the strange, unfamiliar sensation of standing her ground and winning. Theo became a quiet constant over the following month, showing up some afternoons to help repair a section of fence damaged by a storm, other days simply sitting with Alina on the back patio while she worked through boxes of her grandmother's belongings. He never pushed, never assumed, never made her feel like she owed him anything for his time. a novelty Alina hadn't realized she'd been starving for until she had it. "Can I ask you something?" Alina said one evening, watching the sun bleed orange across the water. "Why do you keep coming back? You don't need anything from me." Theo considered the question seriously before answering. "Your grandmother used to say something to me. She said the measure of a person isn't what they do when they need something from you, it's what they do when they don't." He shrugged, a little self-conscious. "I liked her. I like you. That's really all there is to it." Alina felt something shift in her chest, warm and unfamiliar, the opposite of the anxious, performative affection she'd grown used to with Julian. "That's the first time in years someone's wanted my company without wanting something else alongside it." "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people," Theo said gently. The fifth letter, opened weeks later, brought the story's final and heaviest revelation. Rosalind wrote about Alina's mother, Rosalind's own daughter, who had died not in the accident Alina always believed, but years earlier from a long illness Rosalind had kept hidden to protect a young Alina from the trauma too soon. The car accident, tragically, had happened afterward, claiming Alina's father alone, and in her grief and confusion as a child, the timeline had blurred into a story Alina had never questioned. "I made the decision to let you believe what you believed for so long because I thought it would hurt less than the truth," Rosalind wrote. "I see now that hiding pain, even with good intentions, only delays healing rather than preventing it. Your mother loved you fiercely, Alina, every single day she had left. She used to say you had a heart too big for the world's cruelty, and she worried what would happen when that heart was tested. I promised her I would watch over you until you found people worthy of that heart. I believe I finally have, in the boy who used to sketch on my beach and ask about you before he ever met you." Alina read that final line 3 times, stunned. She hadn't realized, hadn't even considered, that Theo's presence in her life might not be entirely coincidental. She found him the next afternoon, sitting on the same stretch of beach where they'd first spoken, sketchbook open on his knees. "Did you know," she asked, sitting beside him without preamble, "that she wanted us to meet?" Theo set down his pencil, a faint flush rising in his cheeks. "She talked about you constantly," he admitted. "Showed me pictures once years ago. Told me if I ever met a woman who could outstubborn her, I should hold onto her tightly." He paused. "I thought she was just being an old woman with a soft spot for matchmaking. I didn't expect," he gestured vaguely between them, "this, whatever this is." "What is this?" Alina asked quietly. Theo studied her for a long moment, the ocean wind pulling at his hair. "I think it's the first time in a long while either of us has felt like someone actually sees us, instead of what we can offer them." Alina's throat tightened. "I don't want to rush into anything. I just got out of something that nearly broke me." "I'm not asking you to rush," Theo said. "I'm asking you to let me stay close while you heal, however long that takes. If this story is hitting you right in the chest, now's the time to hit subscribe and drop a like. We're almost at the ending, and trust me, you don't want to miss how this one wraps up. Comment below if you believe love can find you exactly when you need it most." Weeks turned into months. Alina settled fully into the mansion, transforming it from a monument to grief and secrecy into something that finally felt like home. She began painting again, filling the once sterile studio room with canvases of the ocean, of the beach where she'd first met Theo, of quiet moments that had nothing to do with impressing anyone. She also began something her grandmother would have been proud of, a scholarship fund in Rosalind Whitmore's name, aimed at young women entering business and finance fields, the same fields that had once refused to take her grandmother seriously. Alina personally reviewed applications, remembering her grandmother's handwriting on every letter, remembering the quiet, patient way she'd fought for a future Alina hadn't even known to be grateful for. Desmond never contested the will further. The threat of exposed financial misconduct proved enough to silence him. Alina chose not to pursue legal action against him, though she made it clear the door to any future relationship remained firmly shut until he was willing to be honest. Julian, predictably, resurfaced twice more. Once with flowers and an apology Alina didn't believe, and once, months later, with a lawsuit threatening to claim a portion of the inheritance based on their years together, a claim Alina's attorney dismissed within a week for lack of any legal standing. Alina felt nothing when she heard the news except a quiet, settled peace, the kind that comes only after truly letting go. Theo remained a constant through all of it, never intrusive, never demanding, simply present in the way steady things are present, like tide or sunlight. He helped her repaint the guest cottage on the property into an art studio. He sat with her through the anniversary of her mother's death. The first time in years, Alina allowed herself to properly grieve instead of burying it beneath busyness. He never once asked for anything from her that she hadn't already wanted to give freely. One evening, nearly a year after the night Julian threw her suitcase onto wet pavement, Alina stood on the terrace overlooking the ocean, the same spot where she'd first held her grandmother's letters with trembling hands. Thea joined her, 2 mugs of tea in hand, the same peach cobbler-scented candle her grandmother used to burn flickering on the table between them. "You've changed," Theo said softly, handing her a mug. "In a good way, you stand differently now." "I feel differently," Alina admitted. "For so long, I thought love meant making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I thought I had to earn the right to take up space. And now—" Alina looked at him, really looked at the quiet steadiness in his eyes, the absence of any hunger for what she owned rather than who she was. "Now I think love is supposed to make you feel like you finally have room to breathe." Theo reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers, unhurried and certain. "For what it's worth," he said, "I've never wanted you to be smaller. I've spent the last year wanting to see exactly how big your life could become." Alina leaned into him, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt and the faint sweetness of the candle between them. And for the first time since her grandmother's letters first arrived, she didn't feel like she was surviving her life. She felt like she was finally living it, fully, on her own terms, beside someone who had never once asked her to shrink. Months later, beneath the same string lights her grandmother had once hung across the terrace for warm summer evenings, Theo knelt in front of Alina, a small ring in his palm, no grand speech, no audience, just the two of them and the sound of waves against the shore. "I'm not offering you a mansion," he said, smiling. "I'm just offering you a life where you never have to wonder if you're enough, because you already are, you always have been." Alina laughed through sudden tears, nodding before he even finished the question, and somewhere she liked to believe. Her grandmother was smiling too, finally at peace, her promise to a dying daughter fulfilled in full. A granddaughter no longer facing life alone, standing in the home built from truth, love, and a legacy far greater than money ever could be. If this story moved you the way it moved me writing it, do me a favor, subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment telling me what part hit you hardest. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that the truth always finds its way to the light, and that real love never asks you to be smaller than you are. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. I'll see you in the next story.